Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Monday, July 6th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Well, this wasn't the podcast topic we planned to cover today, but then again, we didn't know when Patrick Mahomes was going to get a contract extension. It turns out that was today. Tack on 10 years for a total of 12, and a grand total of $503 million, and Kansas City has the highest paid player in all of sports. We talk about it and what it means for the organization going forward with Chiefs beat writer Herbie Teope and columnists Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. A note, during the broadcast, we were working with one set of financial figures, $450 million, for the length of the deal, and that was based on early reporting. Later on Monday, Mahomes' agent, Lee Steinberg, tweeted that the deal was worth $503 million. So, the $500 million man, Patrick Mahomes. Let's get right to it. All right, we're here with Herbie Teope and Sam Mellinger, and hopefully we'll be joined by Vahe Gregorian pretty soon. Guys, it's got to be the biggest story in Kansas City history, broken by a liquor store employee.
Hey, that's how we roll.
It is how we roll, and just as I announced that Vahe Gregorian is appearing on my screen, and I hope you're there, Vahe. Oh, he'll figure it out. Well, anyway, so yeah, we got you,
there
buddy.
He is.
Yeah, there he is. Good to hear from you, Vahe.
You've missed a great show so far, Vahe.
Yes, we are. So let's.
All of the
above. Man, you're earlier than I expected. A whole 5 minutes early. Way to go!
I sensed a little pessimism in your text back about we'll just get started.
Well, kind of like the post-game Facebook Lives, just join us when you can.
That's right. Glad to be with you guys.
Terez, good to be with you too, Vahe. Terez used to call these emergency Facebook Lives. This isn't a Facebook Live, but a podcast. But it kind of has that emergency feel to it, doesn't it?
It sure does. Good thing we have a good email director, Blair, and you. So.
All right. 10-year extension for Patrick Mahomes, which makes it a 12-year deal because it's the final 2 years of his rookie deal. 10 added to that. 12 years keeps him in Kansas City through 2031. Wow. First of all, I'll just say that in the history of the NFL, I could only find a couple other contracts that were 10-year deals. One signed by Drew Bledsoe, the other by Michael Vick. And Bledsoe was injured in the second game of the first year of his 10-year deal. And Michael Vick lasted 2 years on his deal with the Falcons. So here's hoping for the Chiefs' sake that Patrick Mahomes has more fortune with his 10-year deal than either one of those guys. But man, 10 years, and the latest that I'm seeing and what I added in my story, $450 million total. And let's just start with what this means for the Chiefs and for Kansas City. Melly, let's start with you since your column is in.
Yeah. There was also Donovan McNabb signed a 12-year deal at one point that he did not play the end of that deal either. But look, I mean, he is now going to surpass Alex Gordon as the richest Kansas City athlete in history. There's a lot to tackle on it. But one thing that I keep thinking about is how much the Chiefs were a good team before Patrick Mahomes was here. They were a perennial playoff team. They were just good enough to lose in the playoffs, right? They were good enough to where the top of the NFL, you could kind of see it, but not really touch it. And it just kind of strikes me how important it is. They just got this one, not just this one. They made other good decisions, but they got the most important decision in franchise history, the biggest all-in move when you think about giving up 3 picks, 2 of them first round, to move up to take a quarterback that you don't need for that season that you plan not to play. And they got it so comprehensively, just undeniably right every step of the way. They started planning this contract, this extension, before he took his first snap. Before he played his first season as QB1, Brett Veach is calling him the best player he's ever seen. And that year in training camp, I'll never forget like asking him about that and giving him the chance to like walk it back. Like, no, that was taken out of context. And what he said was like, people think I think this is the best player ever, but what I said was he's the best player I've ever seen in my time of being around the NFL. That's what I meant. Like, wow, okay. Guy meant what he said.
Total misinterpretation.
Guy meant what he said. Give him credit. So it's just striking. I mean, for years. I mean, if you follow the Chiefs for more than 10 minutes, you know how much they struggle to find a quarterback, and now for the next 12 years. They're going to have the best quarterback in the league. And if he's not the best quarterback in the league, somebody better pack a lunch because, he's setting a high bar.
All right. So, Vahe, what did you write about?
Well, look, I tried to envision 2031 a little bit, and I don't think we're going to have flying cars yet and stuff like that. But my goodness, we're going to have, in a world of uncertainty, we're going to have Patrick Mahomes here still. And I think it's sort of everything Sam said. Sam makes a great point about just the organization's vision that allowed it to pursue this and execute this in all its implications, right, including the overhauling of the defense after 2018 season so that we wouldn't just look at Patrick's time here as a novelty act with great stats. So all that is what stands out to me. And I just think, one way or another, generational, transformational, whatever you want to call him, he flipped the whole script on how football is looked at here, right? They were perennial contenders. I'm doing the air quotes on that because they were also perennial break your heart early in the playoffs teams. And I think the very self-image of the city kind of correlated to that. Even after the Royals, I think there was still this general feeling like, well, we're kind of cursed. It's just never going to work out. Why not us ever? And then you get Patrick Mahomes. And I think even after that loss to the Patriots, that had a little different taste to it. You felt like maybe that was starting something at the end of that season instead of just another, miserable trap door. And, that's proven true now in the last year. And the other thing I'll say for now is what's really great about this isn't just that he's a great football player, but I mean, he's a sort of fundamentally wholesome guy or exemplary guy that you want to be the face of your team, the face of the league, the face of the city. And that's what they've got for another decade. How about that?
Not only that, but they're bringing a Whataburger to town for him. So I think that's that's a. Of course, he asked for that, didn't he? He asked for the Whataburger.
He did, and I think it's going to
force their hands.
There's going to be a Whataburger on every corner with franchisee Patrick Mahomes on it too.
He can buy his own Whataburger now. He can buy it now.
Yeah, a few. Yeah. So, look, I'll play devil's advocate. He hasn't won a Super Bowl in every year he's been in Kansas City.
That's right.
I mean, only one in 3 years. What the heck? I mean,
there was the time he lost in the playoffs to the 2018 Chiefs defense. That's gonna haunt him.
Well,
that's right.
Speaking of devil's advocate, I'm looking forward to the Mellinger column on how this is going to be a parallel to Drew Bledsoe and Donovan McNabb's.
Yeah, exactly. But you're making a joke and it's funny. I get it, but I've thought about this of if his career doesn't end up on this trajectory, if by the end of this contract he is not one of the best 10 quarterbacks in NFL history, what would be the reason? It could be injuries, right? Like that's always, a possibility. But other than that, the reasons that you come up with are sort of, what if defensive figure him out? But look, man, I thought last year was really informative, for lack of a better term. I thought that defenses played him differently, and I thought that I know his stats weren't the same, but I thought he was more effective in a lot of ways than he was his first year as a starter. So will he stop working is hard? Will he stop studying is hard? I mean, that's always he's a human. So that's always a concern, but there's nothing in who he is so far that makes you believe that. And the other thing is, are the Chiefs going to stop surrounding him with talent? And, you never know. The salary cap's about to get tighter. with this deal. But Brett Veach is 41 years old, and he's got a lot of young guys working for him, and they've done a pretty good job of that so far.
You talk about young, and that's the thing we haven't hit on here yet. Mahomes is just 24 years old, man. I mean, he doesn't turn 25 until September the 17th. And so when you're talking about a 10-year deal on top of the 2 years that he had left on his contract, he'll be 36 when this is all over with. How many elite quarterbacks are we watching right now in the National Football League that are playing well into their late 30s, well into their early 40s? And who's to say this kid, who we've clearly identified as a generational type quarterback from day one when he first stepped out there on the field, that's what Patrick Mahomes is. And to your point there, Sam, about is he going to stop working? I don't think that's going to be the case here, given his background. He comes from his father played in the professional leagues, baseball at least, so he knows what it takes to continue to be great. And I just think this is an absolute win-win, not just for the Chiefs, not just for the city of Kansas City, but for the National Football League. He's clearly taken the title as the face of the National Football League, and to have him locked up for 10 more years in the market the size of Kansas City is just phenomenal.
All right, well, here's another devil's advocate question. What is his legacy going to be when the Chiefs let his contract run out in 2031 and he goes and plays for 82-year-old Bill Belichick with the Patriots? How will he be looked on then?
For the Pluto Panthers.
I don't know if he has the 10 Super Bowl rings by then. I think he'll be forgiven in this town. But hey, I want to go back to something Sam said, and I think it's worth visiting that when the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, we all understood that he was coming into an organization with a head coach that was an offensive genius, with to apprentice under one of the best leaders in the NFL, to be in a quarterback room with Matt Nagy, and it was set up for him to succeed. And then you go onto the field, and there's one of the best tight ends in football, one of the fastest wide receivers in football, a solid offensive line. Everything was here for him to succeed, and of course he has succeeded beyond anything that the Chiefs have really ever known. All those pieces, some of the pieces are gone, and he's not always going to have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Mitchell Schwartz and everything else. Has he proven to you guys that that you can replace those parts and he'll still be Patrick Mahomes?
Well, I think that the Chiefs have done a really good job of prioritizing, like, sort of keeping strengths. It's sort of against the grain of what a lot of teams would do. And in some ways, I'm thinking of the Packers here that, they had Aaron Rodgers in a super young roster and cap space and everything like that when they beat it was the Steelers, right? That they beat in the Super Bowl 10 years ago, 11 years ago, something like that. And
2010.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think there's anybody involved that will think that, that will feel like they fulfilled everything that they should have with that team and that starting point. So, yeah, I mean, like, he's going to have to, at some point, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to play quarterback without arguably the league's best tight end and arguably one of the best, what are we calling Tyreek Hill now? One of the best 3 receivers in football, one of the best 5, whatever. A brand new shiny toy out of LSU in the draft. At some point he's going to have to do a little bit more on his own when he's not making, I think, $2.8 million in this upcoming season, and he's making, 47 and a half or whatever it's going to end up being. But I mean, my God, if you were going to bet on somebody, who else in the league would you bet on right now?
Well, I think that's
absolutely.
Right. And, sorry, Blair. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Vahe.
No, just this. I mean, that Sam said this in as many words, but what part of the strategy seems to be, and maybe this is part of a longer term strategy, but they keep reinvesting or doubling down, whatever you want to call it, in those type of players. It seems that there's an emphasis on making sure that 2, 3, 4 years down the road, that's still getting replenished, and I think that speaks a little bit to a broader strategy. Well,
I guess Tom Brady proved that you can change the cast, most of the cast, in New England and still continue to win at the highest level. Didn't change the coach or the tight end, but just about everything else changed. So, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Mahomes and Kelsey will be, stay together for many years, maybe the length of the contract. Who knows? All right. So I put together a little bit of a list of I didn't realize Matt Ryan's $150 million, the deal he signed 2 years ago, the total value, in terms of total value, the most money being paid to an NFL player in terms of contract, I think this one tops that, $150 million. And in all of sports, Mike Trout signed a deal last year, I guess, $426.5 million. Mahomes tops that list now too. What about the idea of Kansas City, little old Kansas City, having the highest paid person in all of sports? What does that say about us?
Well, I read somewhere on Twitter that some wise guy suggested that it's a good thing he's now insulated from the high cost of living in Kansas City and Tyler, Texas.
It says what it says is a whole mess of stuff about the NFL because the Royals are never going to have the highest paid player in baseball or in all sports, and I think that maybe if you're a Giants fan or a Jets fan or a Chargers fan, a Bears fan, although you should probably blame the drafting of Mitch Trubisky for at least part of that. Maybe you kind of want big markets to have the advantage, but if you're a Packers fan or a Steelers fan or a Chiefs fan, and I think just it would be hard to argue that the league hasn't benefited from the ability to do this stuff, and part of that too is that Patrick Mahomes is a national star. Mondesi, no matter what happens, if he stays in Kansas City, it's going to be really hard for him to be a national star. It's just the different sports. And that's another advantage that, the Chiefs can play on a field that, what's funny, the Chiefs can play on a field even with everybody else. But I get, and I'm sure you guys do too, these emails every once in a while, they're going to stop now. But these emails every once in a while from people who are like, oh, well, why is everybody so excited about Pat Mahomes? He's just going to leave for a bigger market in a couple of years. Because that has been so ingrained in Kansas City that you don't get nice things. Stars go and play in other places. It has been so ingrained that people, just naturally think that that's the way it is in this sport too. But it's not, like kids who just finished kindergarten are going to be in college when this contract is over. It is freaking crazy.
It's funny you said that. We don't get nice things, Sam. I think I used some line like that, and I kind of spliced it together with a little Nancy Kerrigan, why? On this thing, but that is, and you guys would know it better than I would, particularly you, Sam, having grown up here, and obviously you, Blair, having been here so long. But I think that word you used, ingrained, it takes a while to sort of change a whole mindset. But things like this happening, I think, suggest again that some things are more possible now than they might have been before Brett Veach decided Patrick Mahomes was who he was.
Absolutely.
How many number 15 jerseys are going to be sold in this, everywhere on Earth over the next, next few days, actually. Let's, I imagine people are going to their Amazon.com now to order up a 15. Why not? Hey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we got to talk about what this means for Chris Jones in that deal. How can we have a podcast about the Chiefs and not talk Chris Jones? We'll be right back. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. We are back with Herbie Teope, Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian. We are talking Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes the new $450 million man in the NFL. We were talking about Kansas City and how this factors into Kansas City. The Royals did have, I think, baseball's biggest payroll right before the strike of '94 when they went out and signed David Cohn. And I know this goes way back before any of us, but Tiny Nate Archibald was the highest paid player in the NBA for 1 year when he was a Kansas City King. So it's not like Kansas City, hadn't been at the top of the money game.
I didn't know that. That's great. A short basketball player from Kansas City is the highest paid. That's amazing.
I think for 1 year, yeah. So, but all right, Herbie, take us through this scenario now. The money and Chris Jones. It was funny that. No more than, 15 or 20 minutes after the news broke, Chris Jones was trending on Twitter. Not just Patrick Mahomes, but Chris Jones as well. What does this mean for Chris Jones in the contract?
I don't think what this means is plain and simple to me. I don't think you're going to see Chris Jones signing a lucrative contract right now because where are you going to find the money? The Chiefs started Monday with $6.2 million in available salary cap space. And that's taken into consideration his deal, his franchise tag, what it's going to count against the cap, as well as setting aside some money to sign your draft picks. Now you've got Mahomes locked up to this lucrative long-term deal. Granted, they can backload it, but I don't see where you're going to find that money to also take care of Jones the same time you take care of Mahomes. So I think the worst-case scenario is next Wednesday on July the 15th, that deadline is going to come and go, and then it's either the franchise tag or Chris Jones decides he wants to sit out the year.
Yeah, I think you're right. What does this mean for the fact that it's we've got a number now? Schefter reported the number $450 million. It's not going to be long before the market catches up with Mahomes and maybe passes him by, won't it? Just a few years. He's locked into a long-term deal for a set amount of money. I'm not fluent in contractees, but it seems to me that the quarterback in the next 2 or 3 years, someone's going to pass him on terms of annual salary, and it strikes me, even though the money is eye-opening and it's more than anything we've seen in Kansas City in terms of where it stands in the NFL. He won't be the highest paid player per year in a few years. Am I right about that, Herbie?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right because it always seems every year a quarterback always leapfrogs another one. You mentioned Matt Ryan there, and then you've got the quarterback up there in Seattle, Russell Wilson, who leapfrogged Matt Ryan, and now you've got Mahomes jumping over Wilson. And eventually the quarterback out of Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, he's due for a contract here in a couple of years, so maybe he leapfrogs Patrick Mahomes. But the good news about this is if the Chiefs decide they want to keep Patrick Mahomes happy and being the highest paid professional athlete is very important to him, they can always go back and rework this. You see that all the time. Julio Jones down there in Atlanta, they reworked his contract. So, you can always do it.
All right. You're right, Herbie. You're right. So what, let's wrap this up. What is this? The reaction was happy, right? Everybody on Twitter really happy about this. We played devil's advocate in the first part of this, but overall, this is just outstanding news for the Chiefs, their organization, and we know that because they bought 6 bottles of Dom Perignon at the liquor store on the plaza. We know they're pretty happy about it.
Why only 6?
I was going to say, who didn't get one is what I want to know.
Right.
Who got left out? So it's funny. For the year 2020, 2 of the, handful of biggest stories, maybe the 2 biggest stories in sports for this year have involved the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes signing this contract. Both pretty happy occasions, I would say, Vahe, don't you think?
Yeah. And
we know the Super Bowl.
I don't know if this is really a very well thought out premise, but my gut feeling is this is the best sports news for any team anywhere recently. Is it not? It's the most clear with the highest upside, highest clear upside while we're in the middle of so much other uncertainty. So it's pretty cool. And you can make a case that the Chiefs are on a roll, as you guys started this podcast with.
Indeed.
Well, one thing I keep thinking about is the Chiefs basically all but promised that this would be a historic deal. But NFL deals don't usually go beyond 5. I know we've mentioned a few examples. Just in the division, Von Miller signed a deal that I think was 6 years. There's been, a few that are 6 to 8, whatever. But just to leapfrog everything like that and just go straight up 10 that doesn't kick in for another 2 seasons is just, it's unprecedented, but it's unprecedented because the quarterback is unprecedented. There hasn't been anything like this guy.
Here's something
that's
else
a good
to consider
point
too. We're mentioning Patrick Mahomes, but Andy Reid is still in his early 60s, and he's always said over the last couple of years how coaching Patrick Mahomes makes him feel younger. Are we going to see a marriage kind of like we saw in New England with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick? How much longer does this extension keep Reid energized, and how much longer is he going to sit there and prowl the sidelines? I think it's a fantastic relationship, obviously, but now the question will be not only Mahomes, but how much longer is Reid going to stay here?
Dude, there's no way to say this for sure, but do any of you guys doubt that Andy Reid is going to coach longer because Patrick Mahomes is here than he would have otherwise if he was like coaching just normal quarterbacks? I absolutely believe that 100%.
Same here, absolutely. I got into that a little in the column too. Just like, Andy's got a little fountain of youth in the form of Patrick here, I think, and how is he not going to try to ride this out as far as he can with a guy he's basically got ESP with?
I agree. And, we mentioned some other quarterbacks and high value and long-term deals. Nobody's been this good this young in the history of the NFL. It just hasn't happened. I remember going into the Super Bowl when we were down there talking about, what if he takes the Dan Marino path, right? He gets to the Super Bowl at such a young age and then never gets back. Well, he's won a Super Bowl at this young age, and Matt Ryan hasn't won one, and Russell Wilson did win one, right? But then he signed the big deal and hasn't they haven't been back to the Super Bowl. Others, just when we talked about Michael Vick, we talked about Donovan McNabb. Those guys, didn't win a Super Bowl. Mahomes has done so much in such a short amount of time. It's just mind-boggling, actually. It's I don't want to say it's unprecedented in the history of sports, but we haven't seen anything like it in the NFL, and he deserves to be the richest man in the NFL. So, and in this city, I feel so good for Kansas City and for Chiefs fans who we've all written about it, we've watched it. They have, I don't compare them to Lions fans or Bengals fans who don't, have had less success. The Chiefs found their misfortune in the playoffs, but man, what happened this past year, the playoff run, as you said, Sam, the 3 comeback victories, down by at least double digits in all of them. And he's an amazing athlete. He just is. And now he's going to get paid a king's ransom. And we're happy for him, right? In some circles, a contract like this, you would just shake your head and say, what? Does he deserve it? Nobody's saying that. Nobody. I don't see any reaction to say that says, no, he doesn't. That's way too much. It's going to compromise the future. Nobody's thinking that way. They're all thinking, great kid, great athlete, absolutely deserves every penny he gets.
I did see somebody on Twitter say something like, the Chiefs have really let themselves be exposed for who's going to play quarterback in 2032. But like the other thing you keep thinking about, like, he has so many different ways of playing. You know what I mean? Like, I think with like Drew Bledsoe and Dan Marino, 2 quarterbacks that we've talked about, those guys are basically statues in the pocket. And if you can disrupt them, they're gone. Patrick can beat you with his arm. He's not going to beat you with his legs, although I guess the Titans might have something to say about that. But, he can have some mobility back there to buy some time, but he can also beat you with his brain. He's unselfish. I mean, there's just, it's not risk-free, there is no such thing, but it's hard to, again, barring some injury, barring him getting lazy, barring the front office just imploding, it's hard to see what's going to stop this.
Yeah,
I agree. All right, guys, it was fun to talk about topics other than protests and COVID-19, and I don't suspect we'll do that again for a while. So, All right, Vahe, Sam, Herbie, thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Blair.
Bye, Blair.
Thank you, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks for sticking with us on what proved to be a late day this Monday. Appreciate the work of our production staff, led by Derek Donovan. Also, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welch, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Tip of the cap to Herbie Teope, Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian for talking Patrick Mahomes' contract extension today. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands, and it's a good one. $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes the Sports Extra with the e-edition. There's 30 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Well, here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus extra news, sports, and business coverage. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Tuesday with another episode.